My name is Naomi Vale. I am 35 years old, and on the night of my mother-in-law's charity gala, my sister-in-law Kelsey poured a full glass of red wine down the front of my dress in front of 112 guests. She did it, slowly smiling while the wine spread across the silk like blood. My husband, Graham, stood 3 feet away and did nothing. My mother-in-law, Vivian, lifted her champagne flute and said, "Maybe now she will remember she is a guest in this family, not the owner of it." Kelsey leaned close enough for me to smell her perfume and whispered, "You can stop pretending you're important, Naomi. I just landed the biggest contract of my career, and once my company starts running your firm's events, you'll have to answer to me." The room laughed. Not all of it, but enough. I looked down at my ruined dress, the one I had bought with my own money for a gala I had quietly paid to rescue. I looked at my husband, waiting for him to choose me with one sentence. He looked at his shoes, so I reached into my clutch, took out the board packet I had brought for Monday's compliance meeting, and placed it on the dessert table. I opened to page 17. Then I said, "Kelsey, do you want to explain the fake insurance certificate before I cancel your $1.2 million contract, or should I let our general counsel do it on speaker?" That was when the laughing stopped. I want to back up, because the wine was not the beginning. The wine was just the moment their little kingdom forgot I had keys. I married Graham Whitlock in September of 2021, on a terrace overlooking the Hudson River. He was handsome in a polished, harmless way, the kind of man who knew which fork to use and which compliments made older women touch their pearls. He worked in private wealth management, or that was how he described it. In reality, he was a client relations associate at a boutique firm, good at lunch, mediocre at math, and deeply convinced that proximity to money counted as achievement. When we met, I was director of corporate partnerships at Argent Harbor Group, a hospitality investment firm that owned boutique hotels, conference venues, and private event spaces across the Northeast. By the time we married, I was senior vice president of strategic operations, which meant I signed off on budgets, vendor lists, risk reviews, and the quiet disasters that never reached guests because someone like me caught them on a spreadsheet 2 weeks earlier. Graham said he admired that. At first. Then admiration became resentment wearing expensive shoes. His family liked my title until they realized title did not mean submission. Vivian Whitlock, his mother, had built her social life around appearing more connected than she was. She chaired committees, hosted luncheons, collected favors, and treated charity like a stage where good lighting mattered more than good works. His sister Kelsey was her masterpiece, 31 years old, glossy, dramatic, allergic to accountability, and always one crisis away from a rebrand. Kelsey had an events company called Kelsey Whitlock Creative. She called it a luxury experience studio. The website used words like bespoke, elevated, and legacy. The actual business was Kelsey, a ring light, a borrowed assistant, and vendors who complained about late payments in emails she never answered. Vivienne adored it. "Women like Kelsey create beauty," she told me once at brunch. "Women like you create systems." She said systems like it was a rash. I did not come from a family like the Whitlocks. My mother taught middle school science in Queens for 27 years. My father ran a small electrical repair shop until his hands started shaking too much for delicate wiring. We were comfortable sometimes and careful always. My parents did not teach me how to impress a room. They taught me how to read a bill before signing it. That skill, apparently, made me difficult. The Whitlocks preferred feelings until money was needed. Then they preferred my money during the first year of marriage. I paid for Vivian's knee surgery upgrade because Graham said the public hospital made her anxious. I paid for Kelsey's booth at a luxury bridal expo because Vivian said it would be humiliating if her daughter's display looked cheap. I paid the final deposit on Graham's parents' anniversary dinner because he forgot his business credit card was overextended. I covered flights, gifts, repairs, flowers, specialty catering, and one emergency tax bill that Kelsey swore was a misunderstanding with the state. Every time, Graham said, "Thank you for being generous with my family." Not our family, my family. The distinction mattered, though I pretended it did not. Kelsey never thanked me directly. She accepted help like accepting tribute. If I paid, she said, Finally, someone understands brand investment. If I hesitated, she called me corporate. If I asked for invoices, she rolled her eyes and said, "This is why people think you are cold." Cold. That word followed me through their house like a draft. Cold because I used contracts. Cold because I did not scream. Cold because I remembered numbers. Cold because I did not let Vivian rearrange my calendar around her luncheons. Cold because Graham could not explain why his wife out-earned him, so he let his mother suggest I lacked softness. I tried to be softer. That was my mistake. The gala that changed everything was supposed to be Vivienne's triumph. Her 60th birthday fell on the same weekend as the annual Whitlock Women's Foundation fundraiser, a charity with a vague mission about empowering girls through elegance. The foundation raised money, yes, but it also raised Vivienne's social standing, which was the more urgent project. 3 months before the event, the original venue canceled after a pipe burst in the ballroom. Vivienne called me in tears, saying the board would never forgive her, the sponsors would vanish, and everyone would blame Kelsey, because Kelsey had recommended the venue. I should have let consequences introduce themselves. Instead, I called in a favor. Argent Harbor had a property called the Marlowe House, a restored mansion event space on the Upper East Side. It was usually booked 18 months out, but a corporate retreat had moved dates. I arranged a discounted internal rate, shifted staff schedules, waived certain rush fees, and quietly covered the balance Vivienne could not afford. I told Graham, "Your mother needs to know this is not free." He kissed my forehead. She knows, she did not know. Or she knew and translated it into obligation. 2 weeks later, Vivienne announced at brunch that Kelsey Whitlock Creative would be producing the gala. I said, "Kelsey is not on Argent Harbor's approved vendor list." Kelsey smiled, "Not yet." Graham squeezed my knee under the table. "Naomi, don't embarrass her. Veteran approval is not personal," Vivienne sighed. "Everything is policy with you." I explained insurance requirements, staffing minimums, food safety documentation, diversity vendor compliance, financial disclosures, conflict checks, and the approval process. Kelsey listened with the expression of a woman being forced to smell cabbage. Then she said, "It's adorable that you think I need a tutorial on events." I had 2 choices. Let her fail and let Vivienne blame me, or put her through the actual vendor review and see whether her paperwork survived. I chose the second. I still thought facts could protect me from family. The review file came across my desk in early March. Kelsey Whitlock Creative submitted itself as a boutique production vendor for select Argent Harbor social impact events. Contract value proposed, $1.2 million over 18 months. The amount made me sit back in my chair. It was not a small gala contract. It was a portfolio contract. 7 events, 3 hotel launches, 2 donor dinners, 1 brand summit, and a foundation partnership. Kelsey had not merely applied to help with Vivienne's party. She had positioned herself as a luxury vendor for my entire company. The references looked impressive. A museum gala, a fashion house dinner, a private equity retreat, insurance certificate, tax documentation, vendor diversity statement, past performance summary. Too impressive. I emailed procurement, "Do not approve until compliance review is complete." Then I called Graham. "Did you know your sister submitted for a portfolio contract?" He sounded too casual. "She mentioned something. $1.2 million is not something. She is trying to grow. She used your mother's gala as a door into my company. Is that so terrible? If the door is real, no. If the paperwork is fake, yes." He exhaled. "Naomi, please do not be threatened by her ambition." Threatened. The word landed exactly where he meant it to. I realized then that Graham had begun viewing my boundaries as jealousy. His sister's delusions had become his pride because they gave him a way to feel powerful in my world. If Kelsey succeeded, he could tell himself the Whitlocks did not need my approval. They could enter through him. But Graham had no authority at Argent Harbor. I did. Compliance found the first crack 8 days later. The museum reference had no record of Kelsey Whitlock Creative as lead producer. She had been a volunteer assistant to a subcontractor for 4 hours. The fashion house dinner existed, but the planning firm listed was someone else's company. The private equity retreat had hired Kelsey for floral mood boards only, then terminated the engagement after she missed 2 deadlines. The insurance certificate looked clean until our risk team called the carrier. The policy number belonged to a canceled general liability plan from a different vendor. Kelsey had altered the named insured field, not skillfully, but confidently, which is its own kind of stupidity. Then came the expense file. Kelsey had been given a temporary vendor portal for the gala only. Through that portal, she submitted preliminary charges, decor prototypes, specialty linens, consultation hours, travel, sample tastings, design research. Buried inside were personal expenses billed as event development, a spa day, designer shoes, 2 dinners at a restaurant nowhere near the venue, and a weekend hotel stay in Miami. During dates, she claimed to be conducting sponsor meetings in New York. Total questionable charges, $46,800. I printed the summary and placed it in a folder. Then I did something I rarely do. I waited. Argent Harbor's general counsel, Lydia Moore, advised termination before the gala. Procurement wanted to block the contract immediately. Risk wanted to escalate the fake insurance certificate. I agreed with all of them professionally. Personally, I had learned something from years around the Whitlocks. If I ended it quietly, Kelsey would become a martyr by dinner. Vivienne would say I sabotaged her daughter. Graham would say I chose work over family. The relatives would never see the receipts, so I told Lydia, hold the final termination until after the gala unless there is safety risk. Lydia studied me. You are giving them room to step into the light. Yes, make sure you can live with what they show you. I thought I could. I did not know they would pour wine on it. The day of the gala was already wrong by noon. Kelsey changed the seating chart without authorization. She moved Argent Harbor's sponsor table behind a pillar to make room for Vivienne's garden club friends. She replaced our approved floral vendor with a cheaper cousin who showed up 2 hours late and demanded cash. She argued with the kitchen about vegan meals because she said, serious donors eat fish. She hung a Step and Repreed Eat banner with the foundation logo larger than the sponsor logos, violating 3 agreements before the first guest arrived. I spent the afternoon fixing her mistakes remotely while finishing a quarterly board packet. Graham was supposed to help me arrive early. Instead, he texted, Mom needs me at the venue. Kelsey is stressed. You understand. I did understand. I understood exactly where I ranked. I still tried. I showered, curled my hair, and put on a deep emerald silk dress I had bought months earlier and never worn because Graham once said it looked too commanding. That night, I wanted to feel commanding. I put the board packet in my car because Monday morning's compliance meeting was at 8, and I planned to review it after the gala. Page 17 contained the Kelsey Whitlock Creative Risk Summary. I did not intend to use it at a birthday party. On the drive, my phone rang. It was the Marlowe House event manager, Celia. Naomi, she said, voice tight. Kelsey is trying to authorize a second champagne tower and a late-night caviar station. Not approved. She says Graham approved it. Graham is not the client. She says he is family. I closed my eyes at a red light. Family is not a billing code. Decline it. Celia paused. Understood. When I arrived at the Marlowe house at 8:47, the gala had been underway for almost an hour. Through the windows, I could see chandeliers, black tuxedos, satin gowns, and Vivienne glowing beneath professional lighting like a woman who believed she had manufactured grace. I walked in holding my clutch, my board packet, and the last piece of patience I had for that family. The ballroom was beautiful despite Kelsey, because my staff was excellent and had likely saved it 12 times before I crossed the threshold. White orchids, candlelight, gold-rimmed plates, a string quartet near the staircase. Donors clustered near the bar. Sponsors stood under the wrong-sized logos pretending not to notice. Vivienne wore silver satin and diamonds. I recognized because I had paid the deposit on them when she claimed the jeweler threatened to cancel the order. She saw me from the center of the room and did not smile. Kelsey saw me next. She was standing beside Graham in a red velvet dress, one hand resting possessively on his sleeve while she laughed at something he had said. The look was not romantic. It was worse. It was ownership by blood. He belonged to their family first, husband second, adult never. I crossed the room. Naomi, Graham said, sounding relieved and annoyed at once. You finally made it. I looked at the clock. I was handling the champagne tower your sister tried to bill to my company. Kelsey's smile sharpened. Always working. It must be exhausting being unable to enjoy anything. It must be exhausting creating emergencies you expect other people to solve. Her eyes flicked around. Too many people nearby. She laughed lightly. See? This is what I mean. You bring corporate aggression into family spaces. Vivian joined us. Tonight is about celebration, Naomi. Please do not make it about control. I looked at my mother-in-law, at her perfect hair, her fundraiser smile, her diamonds, her room, her guests, her illusion. I saved this event, I said quietly. She touched my arm with cold fingers. And now you must learn not to mention it. Dinner service began. I was seated at table 1, but not beside Graham. Kelsey had placed herself between us and put me beside a sponsor's elderly uncle who spent the soup course telling me about municipal bonds. Graham mouthed sorry once. Then he accepted wine from Kelsey and turned toward his mother. I could feel my old self trying to make excuses for him. He hates scenes. He is trapped between wife and family. He will apologize later. He knows this is wrong. The old self was generous because she had been trained to confuse explanations with protection. Between courses, speeches began. Vivian thanked sponsors, friends, family, and those who understand that community requires humility. She did not look at me, which meant everyone did. Kelsey gave a toast next. She spoke about elegance, legacy, women lifting women, and how some people only know how to build spreadsheets while others know how to build magic. The room laughed politely, then she announced, I am thrilled to share that Kelsey Whitlock Creative is entering a major partnership with Argent Harbor Group. It is a $1.2 million portfolio contract, and I want to thank my brother Graham for believing in me when certain people thought I wasn't ready. Applause erupted. Graham stood halfway, nodding like a founder at a press conference. Vivian pressed a hand to her heart. Several relatives turned to me with smug satisfaction, as if Kelsey had just defeated me at my own company. I sat still, nothing had been signed. The contract was under compliance hold. The board packet in my bag said exactly why. But Kelsey was no longer announcing hope. She was announcing entitlement, in front of sponsors, inside a venue my company owned. With my husband smiling beside her, that was not family drama anymore. That was corporate exposure wearing mascara. After dinner, guests moved toward the dessert room. I stepped into the side hallway to call Lydia, our general counsel. She answered on the second ring. How bad? She asked. Kelsey publicly announced the contract as finalized. Lydia exhaled. Of course she did. She credited Graham. Does Graham have authority? No. Is the board packet with you? Yes. Good. Do not argue alone. If she repeats the claim publicly, correct the record. If there is defamation or misuse of company name, call me on speaker. I almost laughed. You sound like you expected this. I read the file. People who forge insurance certificates rarely respect microphones. When I returned, Kelsey was near the champagne table surrounded by relatives. I heard one aunt say, Imagine, from little event parties to $1 million contract. Graham really takes care of his sister. Another said, Naomi must be furious. She likes being the only important woman. Kelsey saw me listening and smiled. Come here, Naomi. We were just talking about how Monday is going to feel when my team starts working with yours. Your teams? She lifted her chin. My company. Your company has one unpaid assistant and a canceled liability policy. Her expression flashed. Only for a second. Then she laughed. See? Bitter. Graham approached quickly. Naomi, stop! Stop! What? Embarrassing my sister. I looked at him. She is using my company's name inside a sponsor event based on a contract that does not exist. Kelsey stepped closer. It exists because your husband made it exist. You just cannot handle that someone in his family has talent. Vivian appeared behind her, smile tight. Naomi, apologize to Kelsey. Right now. You are making guests uncomfortable. Guests were already watching. Of course they were. The Whitlocks never corrected cruelty until the audience noticed resistance. Kelsey picked up a glass of red wine from a passing tray. I saw the decision before she made it. There was a tiny pause, a moment where any decent person would hear a final warning inside themselves. Kelsey ignored hers. She tilted the glass over my chest. The wine poured slowly down the emerald silk, dark and spreading. A few drops hit the marble floor. Someone gasped. Someone else whispered, Oh my God. Graham reached out, then stopped, hands suspended between us like a weak thought. Kelsey leaned in, voice low but not low enough. There, now you look how you act. Stained. My skin went cold, not hot. Cold. That kind of humiliation does something strange to time. The room sharpens. You notice the condensation on glass, the bow tie on a waiter, the tremor in your own fingers that stops once the decision is made. Graham said, Kelsey, that was too much. Too much. Not wrong. Not assault. Not apologize. Too much. Vivienne set her champagne down. Naomi, do not make a scene at my gala. Go clean yourself up. I looked at her. Your gala? Her eyes narrowed. Do not be dramatic. Kelsey laughed. Please. She lives for drama. She just hides it in binders. That was the line that saved me from saying something emotional. Binders. Yes, I had one. I walked to the dessert table, picked up my board packet, and returned to the center of the room. The packet was thick, cream paper, clipped and tabbed for executives who did not like surprises. I opened it to page 17 and laid it flat on the high cocktail table beside Kelsey's wine glass. Then I took my phone from my clutch and called Lydia, speaker on. Naomi? Lydia said. I looked at Kelsey. Lydia, I am at the Whitlock Foundation Gala. Kelsey Whitlock has publicly announced a finalized $1.2 million contract with Argent Harbor Group and attributed approval to Graham Whitlock. She has also poured wine on me in front of guests while repeating claims about company authority. I need you to confirm the current contract status. The room was silent enough to hear Lydia's chair move. Lydia's voice came through crisp and calm. Kelsey Whitlock Creative is not under final contract with Argent Harbor Group. The proposed vendor agreement is under compliance hold pending risk review. Kelsey's face changed. Vivienne whispered, Naomi, stop this. I did not stop. Please summarize the risk review. Lydia did not hesitate. Preliminary findings include falsified vendor references, a materially inaccurate insurance certificate, unauthorized use of Argent Harbor branding, improper billing through a temporary event portal, and questionable charges totaling $46,800. A sound moved through the crowd. Shock, hunger, social fear. Kelsey grabbed the edge of the table. That is confidential. Lydia said, You announced a non-existent contract at a sponsor event. You made it public. I turned the packet so the nearest guests could see the page header without reading private details. Vendor Risk Summary. Kelsey Whitlock Creative. Graham's face went white, finally, not when his sister poured wine on me. Not when his mother told me to know my place. When money, reputation, and liability entered the room, I asked Lydia, Do I have authority to terminate the pending vendor review immediately? Yes, she said. As Senior Vice President and Executive Sponsor of the Compliance Review, you have authority to terminate the process based on material misrepresentation. I looked at Kelsey. Then terminate it. Lydia said, Confirmed. I will notify procurement, risk, and the board secretary. Kelsey Whitlock Creative is removed from consideration effective immediately. For a moment, Kelsey did not understand. People like her often mistake consequences for a scheduling issue. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. You cannot do that, she said. I just did. My company depends on this. Then you should not have forged an insurance certificate. I did not forge, Lydia interrupted through the speaker. The carrier confirmed the policy number belonged to a canceled certificate issued to another vendor. The named insured field appears altered. We will refer the matter to outside counsel. Outside counsel. That phrase hit Vivienne harder than the wine had hit me. She stepped forward. This is a family misunderstanding, Lydia said. I am general counsel for a publicly audited hospitality group. I do not handle family misunderstandings. I handle risk. Somewhere behind us. A sponsor muttered, Good God. Kelsey turned on Graham. Say something. Graham looked at me, then at Lydia's name glowing on my phone screen. Naomi, maybe we can discuss this privately. I almost smiled. You had privacy when your sister altered documents. You had privacy when your mother accepted a venue discount. You had privacy when Kelsey moved sponsor tables and tried to bill champagne towers to my company. You chose public. Vivienne hissed. Enough. No, I said. Enough was the wine. Kelsey's hands began to shake. This will ruin me. I looked at the red stain across my dress, the ruined silk clinging cold to my skin. No, Kelsey, this will document you. That was when Celia, the event manager, appeared beside me holding a towel and a sealed incident report form. I witnessed the wine being poured, she said quietly. Security also has camera coverage from the north corner. Kelsey looked toward the ceiling. She had forgotten cameras. People like Kelsey always remember audiences and forget cameras. Graham reached for my arm. Not violently. Worse. Familiar. The old husband gesture, the one that used to say, "Come here, let's calm down. Let me translate your pain into something my family can digest." I stepped back. "Do not touch me." His hand dropped. His mother saw that and panicked. Not because he had hurt me, because the picture was shifting. Her son was no longer the patient husband of a difficult wife. He was a silent man beside a sister with a fake contract and a mother who had just watched a guest be humiliated at her own fundraiser. Vivienne lifted her chin and tried one last performance. "Naomi," she said loudly, "you are letting ambition destroy your marriage. Everyone here sees that." I turned toward the guests. "Do you?" No one answered. That silence was different from the first. The first silence watched me bleed. This one watched Vivienne calculate. I reached into the board packet and removed a second document. "Since you are concerned about marriage, let us discuss what Graham signed last month." Graham's eyes widened. "Naomi." It was not a divorce paper. Not yet. It was a conflict disclosure form. After Kelsey submitted her vendor application, I had required Graham to sign a statement confirming he had no role in procurement, no financial interest in Kelsey Whitlock Creative, and no expectation of benefit from any Argent Harbor contract. Standard ethics documentation. He had rolled his eyes when I sent it, but he signed. I placed it on the table. Graham certified he had no role in this contract and no benefit. Tonight, Kelsey credited him publicly for securing it, so either she lied to inflate his importance or he lied on a corporate conflict disclosure. Graham whispered, "I was helping my sister network, through my company. I thought you would approve it eventually, because you wanted me to, or because you believed I belonged to you." His face tightened. There it was. The question he had avoided our entire marriage. Kelsey began crying then. Not quietly, not with shame, with rage that had put on tears because nothing else was working. "You were always jealous of me," she sobbed, "from the beginning. You hated that Graham's family loved me." I looked at her. "Your mother loving you was never the problem," Vivienne said. "Do not speak to my daughter." I turned to her. "You trained her to confuse being adored with being exempt." The room absorbed that Kelsey screamed, "I worked for this." Celia, still beside me, looked at her tablet. "You charged the venue for 8 staff meals today, but only 2 outside staff checked in under your company." Kelsey froze. Celia continued, "You also attempted to authorize charges under Ms. Vale's corporate approval code. That request was denied." My eyebrows lifted. "You used my approval code?" Graham looked physically sick. Kelsey shouted, "Graham gave it to me." The room turned to him. He closed his eyes. Vivienne whispered, "Graham?" He opened them slowly, and I watched the last thread of my marriage snap. Not because he had been weak tonight. Because he had been participating before tonight. "I thought it was just for vendor access," he said. I laughed once. It sounded nothing like me. "You gave my approval code to your sister." "She said you were blocking her." "I was. I thought if she could show what she could do. By billing my company?" He looked down. Lydia's voice came through the phone, colder now. "Naomi, preserve that statement." I heard it. Graham's head jerked up. He had forgotten speakerphone. People like Graham always remember excuses and forget microphones. I ended the call only after Lydia instructed me not to discuss further details publicly and confirmed security would preserve the footage. Then I turned to Celia. "Please separate any charges attempted under Argent Harbor from the foundation account. Send the full ledger to Lydia." "Already started," Celia said. "That was why I loved competent women. They move before applause." Kelsey's assistant, a young woman named May, appeared near the service station looking terrified. I had seen her earlier carrying boxes while Kelsey drank champagne. She stepped forward slowly. "I have invoices," May said. Kelsey snapped. "May, shut up." May flinched. Then she looked at me. "I have copies. She told me to change vendor names because rich people never check. I did not know it was your company until tonight. I believed her, not completely, not blindly, but enough to let the proper process handle it." Celia guided May aside to give a statement. Kelsey looked around and realized the room that had laughed with her was now watching to see how far away it needed to stand. That is the thing about social families. Loyalty lasts until liability arrives. Vivienne approached me, voice low. What do you want? The question surprised me only because it should have been asked years earlier. I looked at the ruined dress, a towel first. Celia handed me one. Then I looked at Graham. My keys returned tonight. Your things out of my apartment by Wednesday. No unsupervised access to my home, my office, or any company property. Iris Roth will contact you Monday. Who is Iris? He asked. My attorney, Vivienne inhaled sharply. You would divorce over one family argument? I said. No. I would divorce over every moment that taught you to call this an argument. I left before dessert, not because I was defeated, but because I had already given that room enough of my body. The dress was ruined. The contract was dead. The lie was public. There was nothing left to prove to people who had kneaded wine on silk to understand disrespect. In the coat room, Celia found me again with a garment bag. Borrowed from wardrobe, she said. Black wrap coat. Keep it as long as you need. I took it. Thank you. She hesitated. You should know several sponsors asked whether you are okay. Are they worried before or after the contract? Her mouth tightened. After. At least they are on brand. She almost smiled. Outside, the March air hit the wet wine stain and made me shiver. I stood under the awning waiting for my car and finally let my hands shake. Not my voice, not my face, just my hands. Private earthquake. My phone buzzed. Graham. Come back inside. Mom is crying. Kelsey is hysterical. We need to fix this, I typed. You should have fixed it when she picked up the glass. Then I turned my phone off. At home, I did not cry immediately. I did practical things, because practical things kept me upright. I removed the dress and laid it in the bathtub like a crime scene. I photographed the stain. I emailed the photos to Iris, even though it was midnight. I placed Graham's keys in a bowl by the door. I changed the alarm code. I put his watches, cufflinks, and drawer of sentimental receipts into a box. Only then did I sit on the bathroom floor and cry. I cried for the woman who thought generosity would earn belonging. I cried for the marriage I had been editing in my mind to make it look less lonely. I cried because Graham had watched. That was the part I kept returning to, not the wine. The watching, by Monday morning, the consequences had names. Argent Harbor terminated Kelsey Whitlock Creative from all vendor consideration. The fake insurance certificate was referred to outside counsel. The questionable charges were frozen pending investigation. The attempted use of my approval code triggered an internal security review. Lydia handled it with the clean brutality of a woman who loves clauses more than chaos. Graham emailed me at 7:12 a.m. subject line. Please don't let this ruin my sister. I forwarded it to Iris. At 9:03, Iris sent him formal notice. No direct contact except through counsel. At 9:40, Vivienne called me 13 times. I did not answer. At 10:15, Kelsey posted a vague story about women in power destroying other women out of insecurity. At 10:42, May sent Lydia the invoice folder. At 11:20, Kelsey deleted the story. By noon, 3 sponsors had withdrawn from the Whitlock Women's Foundation pending review. By 4, the foundation's treasurer requested an emergency board meeting. Vivienne left a voicemail at 5:06. You have no idea what you have done, she said. This foundation is my life. I listened once, then I deleted it. That foundation was not her life. It was her mirror, and for the first time, the mirror was showing the bill. Graham came to the apartment Wednesday with movers. Iris arranged for building security to be present. He looked tired, smaller, somehow younger without his family behind him. He stood in the doorway while the movers carried boxes. Naomi, he said. I did not know she would pour wine. I nodded. That is your defense? No, then what is? He looked past me into the apartment we had decorated together. I thought if Kelsey succeeded, my family would stop acting like I married above myself. There it was. The little rotten seed under everything. You let them punish me because you felt small. His eyes filled. I closed the door before the tears could ask me for housing. The divorce filing was not dramatic. Iris was efficient, almost gentle. Graham and I had a prenup because my father, practical saint that he is, had said before the wedding, love him with your whole heart, but do not make a financial decision while wearing white. At the time I rolled my eyes. Later, I sent him flowers. The apartment was mine, purchased before the marriage. My investment accounts were mine. Argent Harbor shares were mine. Graham kept his car, his watch collection, and the embarrassment he had earned. We divided household items through an app because Iris said people reveal themselves most during lamp disputes. Graham tried to claim one painting from the living room, a blue abstract piece he had always hated until he learned it had appreciated in value. I let him have the espresso machine instead. Kelsey's world unraveled faster. Without the Argent Harbor contract, her projected revenue vanished. Without valid insurance, 2 other clients canceled. Without May, who resigned and took her invoice copies with her, Kelsey had no one willing to answer vendor calls. Her assistant later became an event coordinator at one of our hotels. I did not hire her as charity. She was organized, honest, and had survived Kelsey. That is training. Vivian's foundation survived technically, but not socially. Sponsors asked for audited financials. The board discovered personal charges buried in event expenses, salon appointments, personal flowers, car service, luxury gifts coded as donor cultivation, nothing enormous alone. Together, a portrait, Vivienne resigned to focus on family. People like Vivienne never say they were removed. They say they are focusing. A month after the gala, I received a handwritten note from one of the foundation board members, a retired judge named Elena Park. It said, "I should have asked more questions when elegance became more important than transparency. I am sorry." I kept that note, not because it fixed anything, because it proved someone in that room had learned the right lesson. Kelsey showed up at Argent Harbor headquarters 6 weeks later. Of course she did. People who live on entitlement do not understand locked doors until securities explains them. I was in a budget review when reception called. "There is a woman in the lobby demanding to see you. She says you destroyed her life. Is she wearing sunglasses indoors?" A pause. "Yes, that is Kelsey." I told security not to touch her unless necessary and took the private elevator down with Lydia. We found Kelsey near the reception desk, hair messy, makeup too heavy for 10 in the morning, holding a folder like it might become evidence if she gripped it hard enough. When she saw me, she started crying immediately. "You have to reverse the vendor alert," she said. "No one will work with me." Lydia said, "There is no public vendor alert. There is an internal risk notation based on documentation." Kelsey glared. "Same thing, no," Lydia said. "One is a consequence, the other is your imagination." Kelsey turned to me. "My mother is humiliated. Graham barely speaks to us. The foundation is dying. Are you happy?" I looked at her for a long moment. The woman who poured wine on me now stood in a lobby, asking me to clean the stain she made. "I am not happy about your life collapsing," I said. "I am happy I stopped funding the illusion that held it up." She shoved the folder toward me. "I brought references. Real ones. Good. Use them somewhere that does not require lying about the old ones. You are cruel. No, I am unavailable." Lydia signaled security. Kelsey was escorted out while shouting that I would regret this. I did not. Regret requires believing there was a better choice. I refused. There was not. Graham tried one last emotional campaign in July. He sent an email through his attorney, which Iris forwarded with the subject line, "You may ignore this, but I am legally required to share." The email was long. He said he had started therapy. He said he finally understood how intimidated he felt by my success. He said his family had used his insecurity against both of us. He said watching Kelsey pour wine on me had made him freeze, because he had spent his whole life freezing when his mother and sister escalated. He said he was sorry, then he asked whether we could meet for coffee before finalizing the divorce. I read the email twice. It was the best apology he had ever given. It was also too late to matter in the way he wanted. I wrote back through Iris, "I believe you are beginning to understand your behavior. I hope that continues. I am not available for coffee, reconciliation, or emotional closure. Please complete the remaining disclosures by Friday. Short, legal, kind enough." Closed. That night, I called my parents. My mother answered on speaker, my father yelling from another room about a baseball game. I told them I was okay, really okay. My father said, "Did the prenup hold?" "Beautifully. I have never been prouder of a document." My mother scolded him. Then asked about my heart. I paused. "My heart is tired," I said, "but it is mine again." There was a silence, then my mother said, "That is enough for now." She was right. 3 months after the gala, Argent Harbor hosted its annual leadership retreat. I wore a white suit because I wanted to tempt fate and because dry cleaners exist. During a panel on ethical growth, someone asked how leaders should handle conflicts when business and family overlap. The moderator laughed and said, "Naomi, this sounds like one for you." The room chuckled. They knew pieces, not all. Corporate gossip travels in bullet points. I said, "You handle it before it becomes a crisis. Written disclosures, independent review. No favors disguised as opportunities. And if someone tells you policy is unkind, remember that policy is often what protects the person without social power in the room." Afterward, May found me near the coffee station. She was wearing a staff badge from her new role, hair neat, tablet in hand. "I wanted to thank you," she said. "For what? For not treating me like I was Kelsey. You were not Kelsey. A lot of people would not have cared." I thought about that. She was right. It is easy to become careless with collateral damage when you are finally angry. I was glad Iris and Lydia had kept me precise. May smiled. Also, the new vendor training uses the phrase, "family is not a billing code." I burst out laughing. Some pain becomes policy. Some policy becomes a joke. Some jokes keep another woman from being trapped at a table with people who call exploitation love. That felt like a useful conversion, better than revenge, better than wine. I need to tell you about the first time I realized Graham was embarrassed by me. It was not at the gala. It was a year earlier, at a dinner with his college friends in Soho. One of them asked what I did, and before I could answer, Graham laughed and said, "Naomi basically runs around telling grown adults to follow rules." Everyone laughed. I smiled because I had been trained to treat jokes as harmless if the person telling them still held my hand under the table. Later that night, in the cab, I told him the joke bothered me. He said, "You are too sensitive about work." I said, "You made my job sound small." He looked out the window. "Sometimes you make everyone else feel small." That sentence became a seed. I heard it again whenever I succeeded. A promotion, a speaking invitation, a board presentation that went well. Graham would celebrate for an hour, then grow quiet. I thought he needed reassurance. I gave it. I told him I admired his people skills, his charm, the way he remembered birthdays. I did not understand that some people do not want reassurance, they want redistribution. Not of money, of light. He wanted me to dim until his reflection improved. Kelsey understood that instinct in him and fed it like a pet. She started calling him the bridge. That was her phrase. At first, I thought she meant between families. Then I heard how she used it. Graham is the bridge into Argent Harbor. Graham understands how to talk to Naomi. Graham can get things moving. She spoke as if my authority were a locked pantry and my husband held the key. Every time I corrected her, Graham looked embarrassed on her behalf. "She is just excited," he said. "Do not make her feel stupid." But making Kelsey feel stupid was never my job. Keeping her from doing stupid things was becoming a full-time position nobody had hired me for. The approval code incident began 2 weeks before the gala. Our internal system generated temporary access for event vendors. Codes were attached to scope, department, and spending limits. Mine was executive level, never to be shared, never to be used by family, and protected by policies I had written after a vendor years earlier tried to bill a helicopter as transportation ambience. I had shown Graham the code once accidentally when working from home. He stood behind me at the kitchen island, making coffee. "That is a lot of letters," he said. I minimized the window. Apparently he remembered enough to recognize its power when Kelsey asked, looking back. I think Graham liked being needed by Kelsey, because being needed by me required maturity. I did not need him to rescue me from invoices or software or hard conversations. I needed partnership, which is quieter and harder. Kelsey needed rescue loudly. She made him feel heroic by handing him messes that other people had created. Usually her, Vivienne encouraged it. "Your sister has such a big heart," she would tell Graham. The world can be cruel to women like her. Women like her meant women who cried before consequences. Women like me meant the consequences. The family system worked because everyone had a role. Vivienne ruled. Kelsey dazzled and broke things. Graham translated their demands into something I might accept. I paid, fixed, softened, and then apologized if the fixing exposed the breaking. That gala was the night I resigned, not with a letter, with a wet dress and a board packet. Before that night, I had still believed there was a version of the Whitlock family that could love me if I just explained clearly enough. After that night, I understood they had always understood me. They simply preferred the version of me they could use. The board packet itself had an ordinary origin. Every quarter, Argent Harbor held an operations risk review. Most people imagine executive meetings as dramatic rooms full of declarations. Ours were mostly coffee, red lines, and people trying to stay awake while legal explained liability exposure. The packet for that Monday covered 5 vendor reviews, 3 labor compliance updates, a food safety audit, and Kelsey's file. Kelsey's section was not even the largest. That almost makes me laugh now. In the grand machinery of my work life, she was page 17. A problem, yes, but contained. The Whitlocks treated her as the center of the universe. To my company, she was a vendor with bad paperwork. There is a strange freedom in seeing someone reduced to their actual scale. Page 17 listed 5 bullet points. The fake insurance certificate, unverified references, unauthorized brand use, improper portal charges, potential conflict disclosure violation connected to Graham. Below that, Lydia had written one recommendation: terminate pending vendor review and preserve record. That sentence was waiting in my bag while Kelsey poured wine on me. Some people call that fate. I call it filing. After the gala, the first person who came to my apartment was not Graham, not a Whitlock, not even Iris. It was my father. My mother had called him after I told her a shortened version of the night, and he arrived with a toolbox, a bag of bagels, and the expression of a man trying not to commit a felony. "Where is the alarm panel?" he asked. "Dad, I already changed the code. I trust you. I do not trust men who look sad after letting their sisters assault people with beverages. He did not assault me. He watched." My father has always believed watching is a verb. He checked the door, the windows, the balcony lock, and the electrical panel because that is how he loves. Practical, quiet, slightly excessive. My mother came later with soup and did not ask me to forgive anyone. She sat beside me on the sofa and said, "I am sorry you had to be strong in a room where your husband should have been brave." That sentence broke me harder than anything Vivienne had said, because my mother named the real wound. I had been strong. Again, I was so tired of being good at surviving rooms. The incident report became part of the divorce file. Iris included photographs of the dress, Celia's witness statement, the security footage note, and stills from the ballroom camera. I watched the footage once. Only once. It showed Kelsey lifting the glass. It showed Graham's hand moving and stopping. It showed Vivienne's face, not shocked, not horrified, but satisfied. It showed me looking down at the stain for exactly 4 seconds before turning toward the dessert table. Iris paused the video there. "You see that?" she asked. "What?" "That is the moment you stopped asking permission." I did see it. My shoulders changed, my head lifted. The woman in the video was wet, humiliated, and very calm. She looked like someone who had finally reached the end of a hallway and found the door unlocked. I saved one still from that footage. Not the wine, not Kelsey. Me reaching for the board packet. Whenever I doubt myself, I look at it and remember that clarity does not always feel powerful in the moment. Sometimes clarity feels like cold silk sticking to your skin while your heart quietly packs its bags. Kelsey's defense, when it came, was exactly what Lydia predicted. She claimed the insurance certificate had been prepared by a freelance assistant. Then she claimed she had never submitted it. Then she claimed the carrier misunderstood. Then she claimed everyone altered documents in the events world, and Naomi was only making a big deal because of family jealousy. Every version contradicted the last. Outside counsel sent one letter. Kelsey stopped emailing. The questionable charges were trickier. She had used vague categories because vague categories are the swamp where fraud likes to hide. Decor research, client experience, executive hospitality, concept development. But receipts have little loyalties. They showed where she had been, what she had bought, and who had signed. The Miami hotel stay was the most ridiculous. She billed it as sponsor cultivation. The sponsor she named had been in London that week. Her own Instagram story placed her at a pool with a caption that read, "Brainstorming luxury in its natural habitat." Lydia printed that caption for the file. I asked if we really needed it. She said, "Never interrupt a person who documents their own misconduct in cursive font." Vivienne tried to save the foundation by sacrificing Kelsey first. That was perhaps the least surprising part. 2 weeks after the gala, she sent a letter to donors saying the board had discovered vendor irregularities caused by an external contractor and that the foundation had acted swiftly to protect its mission. External contractor. Her daughter. The woman she had toasted as a visionary under chandeliers. Kelsey called Graham screaming. Graham called me, forgetting again that direct contact was prohibited. I let it go to voicemail. His voice sounded exhausted. "Naomi, my family is falling apart. Mom is blaming Kelsey. Kelsey is blaming me. Everyone is saying, you planned this." I almost called back to say, I did not pour the wine. I did not forge the certificate. I did not share the approval code. I did not bill Miami as sponsor cultivation. Then I remembered something Iris told me. Never attend a trial in someone else's voicemail. I forwarded it to her instead. She replied, "Good. Stay boring." Boring became my goal for a while. Boring meals, boring evenings, boring legal correspondence. Boring is underrated after chaos. Boring is the sound of no one demanding you save them from themselves. May's statement was devastating because it was plain. She did not use dramatic language. She listed dates. On February 12th, Kelsey instructed me to replace vendor names on sample invoices. On February 18th, Kelsey told me the insurance certificate was basically fine because big companies never call carriers. On March 4, Kelsey asked whether Naomi Vale's approval code would unlock a higher spending threshold. On March 7, Graham Whitlock texted Kelsey a partial code and wrote, "Try this. N uses it all the time." There was the text, not emotion, not interpretation. Text when Iris showed it to me, I stared at Graham's words until they blurred. N uses it all the time, not my wife, not Naomi, N, a shortcut, a source of access, a code he could pass along. That hurt more than some of the bigger betrayals because of its casualness. Graham did not sound like a villain. He sounded like a man helping his sister get around an obstacle. And the obstacle was me. Sometimes betrayal is not a dramatic choice. Sometimes it is convenient sent in a text. The media never got the full story. That was intentional. Argent Harbor handled the vendor issue quietly, professionally, legally. No press release, no public shaming. Just termination, preservation, and internal controls. Vivienne's social circle, however, required no press release. It had its own distribution network made of brunches, group chats, charity committees, and women who said, "How sad with the hunger of wolves." I heard through Elena Park that Vivienne tried to attend a museum luncheon in April and was seated at the far end of a table near the emergency exit. For a woman like Vivienne, that was exile. No one confronted her. They did something worse. They became polite. Politeness is how social circles bury people without fingerprints. Kelsey's company website stayed up for another month. Then the portfolio page disappeared. Then the testimonials. Then the entire site became a landing page that said, "Something beautiful is coming." Nothing came. I did not celebrate. I had seen too much of myself drained into that family to cheer at the wreckage. But I did feel the clean satisfaction of doors closing from the correct side. One night in late spring, I dreamed about the wine. In the dream, it never stopped pouring. Kelsey stood in front of me with the same glass, but the liquid kept coming, endless, warm, red. Graham watched. Vivienne smiled. I could not reach the board packet because my hands were full of apologies. I woke up shaking. The next morning, I called my therapist, Dr. Anika Shah, whom I had not seen in 6 months because I had been too busy, which is often the lie high-functioning people use when they are actually afraid to slow down. I told her the dream. She said, "What were the apologies for?" I closed my eyes. For being late, for being successful, for embarrassing them, for not stopping Kelsey sooner, for making Graham feel small, for bringing work into family, for leaving. Dr. Shaw waited, then she said, "Which of those belong to you?" "None." The answer was immediate and unbelievable. "None." I wrote it on a note and put it where the old sticky notes used to live. "None of this belongs to me." I needed to read it every morning before I believed it. The final divorce meeting happened in August. Graham looked healthier, which annoyed me for reasons I am not proud of. He had been going to therapy. He had moved into a small apartment downtown. He no longer wore the expensive watch his mother had given him after our wedding with money I later learned came from a check I wrote for foundation expenses. He said very little. His attorney said enough. The settlement was clean. Prenup honored, property confirmed. No spousal support, mutual non-disparagement with exceptions for legal proceedings. Graham's conflict disclosure issue remained between him and his employer, who had placed him on probation and stripped him of certain client privileges. Not prison, not ruin. Consequences scaled to his choices. After signing, he asked for 1 minute. I looked at Iris. She gave the smallest nod. Graham said, "I thought being married to you proved I was enough. Then every time you succeeded, I felt like it proved the opposite." I did not rescue him from that sentence. He continued, "I let my family make you the reason I felt small. I am sorry." This time, the apology had no request attached. That made it harder. I said, "I hope you mean that. I do. I hope you become a man who protects the next person before the room turns." His eyes filled. I left before they spilled. The night after the divorce finalized, I hosted dinner in my apartment for my parents, Caroline from work, Celia, Lydia, Iris, May, and Dr. Shaw, who declined because therapists have boundaries and apparently cannot be bribed with tiramisu. I invited the women who had helped me remain precise when pain wanted me to become reckless. My father brought flowers. My mother brought rice pudding. Caroline brought champagne. Lydia brought a folder as a joke and said, "It contains only napkins." We ate at the table Graham and I had chosen together, and for the first time it felt like mine. Not because his chair was empty. Because every chair that was filled belonged to someone who did not need me smaller to feel comfortable. Celia raised a glass, to not making a scene. I laughed. "I made a scene." "No," she said. "They made the scene. You brought minutes." That line became one of my favorites. There are people in this world who turn pain into spectacle. There are others who turn it into minutes, records, policies, and exits. I want to be the second kind. Most days, I am. I keep the framed pieces of the emerald dress inside my closet, not because I want to stay angry, but because I want to stay honest. The clean square and the stained square remind me that both versions are true. I was generous before. I was humiliated after. Neither cancels the other. Some people tell you to move on, as if moving on means throwing away the evidence of what taught you. I disagree. I think moving on means the evidence no longer has to sit in the living room. It can go somewhere private, somewhere quiet, somewhere you can open the door when you need to remember and close it when you are done. I also kept the board packet. Page 17 is still clipped. Sometimes I imagine Kelsey's face when she realized her whole performance had been reduced to a header, a risk summary, and a recommendation line. That is what consequences do. They take the grand story people tell about themselves and translate it into what happened, not what they meant, not how they felt, what happened. And what happened was simple. She poured wine. Graham watched. Vivian smiled. I opened the packet. The rest was just accounting. No apology required now. Ever the emerald dress could not be saved. The stain set too deeply, and the silk never recovered. The dry cleaner looked genuinely mournful when she told me. I thanked her, took the dress home, and hung it in the back of my closet for 2 weeks, unable to decide whether keeping it was strength or sickness. Then I cut it, not angrily. Carefully. I cut a square from the least damaged part and another from the darkest stain. I placed both in a frame with a small card underneath, before, after. Both mine. I hung it inside my closet door where only I would see it. Because that night did not ruin me. It marked the place where I stopped trying to be welcomed by people committed to misunderstanding me. Near the end of this video, I want to ask you something directly. I pinned a question in the comments. If your in-laws humiliated you in public and your husband just watched, would you leave that night or give him one chance to explain? Go to that pinned comment and tell me your honest opinion. I want to know what you would do in Naomi's place. And if this story reached you, please like this video and subscribe to She Chose Herself. Your support helps this reach another woman wiping someone else's wine off her dress while everyone tells her not to make a scene. My sister-in-law thought wine would make me smaller. My mother-in-law thought family meant obedience. My husband thought silence could keep him safe. But the board packet told the truth. The contract disappeared. The foundation cracked. the marriage ended. And I walked out stained, shaking, and finally clean. That was not the night I lost my place in their family. That was the night I stopped renting it with my dignity.